Welcome to the Afghanistan Project Podcast. I'm your host, Beth Bailey, and today my guest is U.S. Army veteran James McCants. James entered the U.S. Army in 2006 and graduated from the Defense Language Institute after finishing the Tagalog language basic course in 2007. After 2 deployments to the Philippines, James deployed to Afghanistan between March 2011 and February 2012 with the Headquarters Support Company of 3rd Battalion, 1st Special Forces Group. He spent time in Baghlan, Konduz, and Faryab provinces, with the majority of his deployment with ODA 1313 at Village Stability Platform Mangal, located in Mangal Village, Baghlan-I-Jadid District, Baghlan Province. After separating from the Army in October 2012, James joined the Georgia National Guard and served from October 2012 until October 2018, reaching the rank of Staff Sergeant. James now lives in Juneau, Alaska, where he works as a bus driver for Capital Transit. It is so great to have you on here, James. You have a really unique story, and I'm excited to hear more about it.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm glad I was able to reach out. We were able to connect and have a lot to say, and appreciate you allowing me to be here.
Oh, it's an honor. I love always, I wanted this podcast to delve back into our Afghanistan deployments because so much of what's happening now, so much of the advocacy that's going on now is because of how much Afghanistan touched the people who fought there. And so it's always an honor to get to go back to that past and talk about the things that our veterans went through and why the country means so much to them. So I'd love for you to start by talking about your deployment, the training, the lead up, what the AO was like when you got there, all those kinds of atmospherics right in the beginning.
Yeah, so for me specifically for the train up, I went to Fort Lewis in July of 2011, and specifically to be a member of what we call Special Operations Team Alpha, which is intelligence support, to the team. So not Special Forces, just worked for them. So I got there in July after leaving Hawaii because I knew that's what I wanted to do. For me specifically, since I just got there, it was an airborne slot, so went to jump school in I think September and October of 2010, and then our first real training was probably mid-December. We went to Yakima training ground there in kind of, I guess, central Washington State, and we did about 2 weeks out there in the snow with equipment, small unit tactics, equipment, this, that, and the other, and then had some leave for Christmas, and then in January I think we had a charter flight out to Fort Bliss, and then we went out from Fort Bliss to what was called McGregor Range. And I want to say we spent a couple of weeks, maybe a month there in total. Our team and then all the special forces teams out there that were going to go. So we did that. Went out in the desert. I'd looked it up at one time. There's some kind of Afghan created village out in the New Mexico desert, and we drove a couple hours in the middle of the night in our MTVs out there to go to it, and stay there for a couple days, and that was really good training. And anyway, so we did that and for about the month, came back, and then I can't remember the exact date we deployed. That was in March of 2011 for us, but I do remember being out there at McCord Airfield and getting on a plane. We flew from McCord straight over to Germany, Ramstein Air Base. And what was interesting about our trip there is we landed on Ramstein, I want to say late on a Monday, and the sergeant major for the company was like, "Hey, no one go anywhere. We got you billeting here on base. Some issues with the plane, but we'll be out here tomorrow." And so Tuesday turned into, no, there's still issues with the plane. We'll be out here Wednesday. Wednesday rolls around. No, there's issues with the plane. We'll be out of here Thursday. And my team sergeant, I think, called me that night, and basically Sergeant Major had said, because the issue is I had another group of guys go through there and deploy, and the whole plane's broken a couple of days in Germany, but they got drunk and whatnot. I guess some of the guys didn't make it to the airport in time back on base. So Sergeant Major said, "Hey, look, some of you guys might not even be coming back, so no BS. Noon on Friday, this plane is going to Afghanistan. But Thursday, it's all yours. Go do what you like. I don't care. See you later. Better be back on Friday." So they actually let us off on base there on Thursday. So we went out into town, had a great time, came back, and then we landed in Missouri Sharif, which is up north. I believe it's actually in Baghlan Province. And so that first day, get off the plane, we go to some temporary barracks there on the other side of the airfield. And if you've ever been to Missouri Sharif, huge international camp, it's the International Camp Marmal. And so you had the Germans, I want to say the Swedes, and a bunch of other countries there, huge base. But it was on the opposite side. And so a lot of the teams kind of knew where they were going, replacing other teams. So relatively quickly, they maybe there a day or two. For us, our team was five guys. And so again, we were support, doing intelligence support. So it seemed like it was a month before our team sergeant had gone out to a couple of the team sites and see, where we could kind of be best used and talk to the AOB commander and everything. And so eventually I did go to Konduz there with one of the teams in the beginning, probably in April for, I want to say about a month. Did a couple missions, maybe like 3 or 4 missions with the team there, mainly out of Konduz Province. And after that, they sent us down, or at least me specifically, down to Baghlan Province, where the team was doing what they call village stability operations. So that's where they'd go to the local elders, based on your village size, we think we could train X amount of guys. Give us your numbers, your task skill. So the elders would give those numbers. The team would spend about a month, building them up with, training, weapons training, teaching them law, this, that, and the other, and just kind of month by month spread that out to more and more villages. So Condos was nice. I mean, that team, it was always kind of high value targets. They got a specific person, good intel, go out, do that mission, come back, go out, do that mission, come back. Whereas in Mangal, that was the actual village stability platform where we were, there every day and, training, not me specifically, again, there was a team. Um, but as much as we could, intelligence to them, things happening against the base and anything like that. But what was interesting is that first month, 6 weeks, we had to build the thing. So we were at a OP North and Baghlan Province, just north of Pulikomri, as a German base. And so every day we'd go out there to Mangal village to do construction. And the interesting part is the very first time, at least I was with them, that we went to Mangal village was actually a protest. The local, I guess, militia commander, I can't remember his name, but he had organized a protest against us. And so I remember us going up a hill, and then coming around the curve, and then, there's people with signs and, holding their hands up, whatnot. And, also the team went out there and, hey, what's this guy's angle? I think it's more money, cause a problem, get more money for the land that we eventually rented to put that base on and everything. Just kind of showed everybody who's in charge, but, so be it. And, but over the course, like I said, of a month, every day we'd go out there, we'd have wood, whatnot, dropped off. We were out there building kind of platforms along the HESCO barriers. So if there's an attack on the base, these are our platforms and shooting platforms and where we could put the ammo cans and this, that, and the other. It got old though pretty quick because one issue we had was food. So every day we're going out there with the first strike rations or MREs, and if anyone's ever eat them, they get old very, very quickly. And so quite a few times we'd go out with the locals, give them some money. Hey, can you bring us back some real food? So they bring us, it's like a euro, but it was non-bread with, I got goat meat, this, that, and the other. But it was good being out there in the sun. We were working, meeting the locals, building up the base. Me and my boss that was there, Josh, we'd actually got a chance to go down to where's it, Bagram Air Base. We had a $10,000 a month fund to support the team. So we went out a couple days to training down there, and we came back with like 20,000 in local currency. But funny story to that, we went to Missouri Sharif to actually physically get the money from a finance company. We literally took a book bag and had a book bag full of local currency, just stacks of it. But brought it down the base and handed it directly off to the 18 Charlie there, the Special Forces engineer who's kind of overseeing everything. And what was interesting was there was a Afghan, probably in the 60s, that actually came to the U.S. in the 1960s, went to some college out in like Kansas for farming and whatnot. And so after the invasion, came back to Afghanistan and helped the country. So he was the well guy. That's what our money went to, is building the well and the housing fort and everything, the storage tank. But after that first month or so, everything got built, and that's when really obviously the team took over with bringing locals in, going through that whole process. So a good amount of the time was just support of anything that's involving the base, anything going on, trying to as they bring in new recruits, do some vetting with them. So it was kind of a routine. And then every so often, the team would go out there with training, or if they had intel about, Abu, bad guy, whomever, kind of do a presence patrol with them. Sometimes we'd go along, or we would have what was called a med cap. I think it's medical civilian action program, where we'd bring in locals to give them some free health care. So we did a couple of those. Those were always very large events, but going to those, some of those towns, very often, because the team's now working with that particular village that's more further away than when we started. You go over the same terrain, meet the same people, buy from the locals. Like one time, one of our computers crashed, and I had our interpreter go buy a bootleg copy of Windows XP to go reboot the system, which ended up working out, But for me, in my experience, being there, same people, same places, or going that same, intelligence meeting there at Polycomrie, and seeing the other people, I really enjoyed it. And later in the deployment, for whatever reason, they moved me to different places to do intel support with some of the other teams that were, for example, out in Faryab Province. And that's when I know you saw that there was a recent news article in the New York Times that did an interview with some of the Taliban that took it over since the collapse of the last government. And so there was a SEAL team there that supported them. They really hitting it hard for the first week or so, and eventually calmed down. So they sent me back to Baghlan, and that's when, like, for example, we did have a threat of a suicide bomber against the base there, because obviously with our transitioning from large amounts of U.S. forces, this was 2011, trying to, as I said before, that Vietnamization process, turning it over to the Afghans in this situation. And so the graduations events for those classes, you have U.S. colonels, generals, local Afghan army generals, police generals, whatnot. And so we had intel that there was a suicide bomber against the special forces there in this particular part of Baghlan Province. Well, the team I worked for was the only one, so obviously this information was against our our base specifically. And I remember the night before the graduation, we finally narrowed it down to with good intel exactly who it was. So it ended up being was these guys were smart, but they didn't know how to read and write their own language, Dari. So we had hired a guy from Kabul who had a college education to after their training day to help them read and write, and it was that guy, Mr. Educated, from Kabul, that ended up being the guy, and we literally didn't hammer that one down. That's it, nail it down to the night before the graduation ceremony. I remember Chris, the team sergeant there, go for a headshot. If you strike him in the chest, something might set off the bomb, but you see this guy, sight unseen, take him out, no problem. And what ended up saving us was that day that was supposed to happen. There was some bigwig politician from Kabul that was there in Baghlan-I-Jadid. So instead of a lot of these folks showing up to, this graduation in Mangal village, everyone went to, cozy up to this politician for obviously political favors, this, that, and the other. So a very low turnout for this graduation, other than maybe family members, a couple of people, and I guess the guy decided that wasn't the day to, to blow himself up and take out as many people as he wanted to. So it ended up not happening. I never did figure out what exactly happened to the guy. I'm pretty sure they captured him, but then eventually went over back to Missouri Sharif towards the end of the deployment. But for me, like I said, a lot of time on the ground and covering the same ground with the same villages and back and forth. So you really kind of get a lay of the land, how people live, um, just understanding, day to day. And so what we were talking about before it started, I brought up, when they caught Osama bin Laden, I was there at OP North. We're in our circle doing our comms check before going out to our convoy over to Mangal village to finish setting them at the base. And the team captain, hey, by the way, they killed Osama bin Laden, and okay, still got to do what we got to do today. Nothing really changes. But seeing that kind of up close and personal part of the war, and unless you're really affecting, out here in the villages and in the provinces, their day-to-day life, security, setting the conditions for business to flourish, government to flourish, projects to flourish, then, none of it really matters. So, without me running my mouth the whole time, that was kind of my experience in going through the training and getting there. And, eventually, like I said, we left in February of 2012 from Missouri Sharif and came back home to Fort Lewis.
Yeah, like I told you when we were just chatting beforehand, I also had the same thing happen when Osama bin Laden was killed. I was on a short vacation from work, and I remember just watching, President Obama talking about it on the screen, and then just my phone blowing up with everybody who, so well meaning, all of my loved ones were like, "Are you watching this?" Thinking that it would like tie to my job. And I'm like, "Y'all, I work on the Taliban. He's with Al Qaeda. Like, this is my life is business as usual. This will not change." And it didn't change anything. And you're right. Like, when you're in it, you're doing the other things. You just keep doing the things. And I guess my question for you is, it sounds like when I think about that Faryab, which I will link to this video. It's a great, sad and great little video that the New York Times put out. Very short, easy to watch, unlike my episodes that are very long. But they go to this school that was built of concrete, and now it's got a giant hole in it because I guess the Americans bombed it because the Taliban were using it as a hiding place. Because why wouldn't they? You've given them a fortified place to go hide out. And so we had put all the money into building the school. Then we bombed it, and now the Taliban are using it to laugh at us and talking about, we were never able to get rid of the insurgency in their area, is basically what they say in this video. But from everything you're telling me is that it seems like you could operate very well. If all that was a threat while you were there was a single suicide bomber threat, I mean, you guys were able to push out the Taliban, it sounds like. Is that true? I mean, when you were there, you were able to push them out and it wasn't a problem?
Yeah, and I hate using the word me 'cause again, I'm the support guy, and I mean, we all have our part to play, but specifically there in Faryab, that was actually a SEAL team, and I can't remember which one. Their symbol was like a skeleton of a frog. I don't know which team that was. I can't remember their face or the name of it. But anyways, I'd gotten there maybe a week or so after the team arrived, and what happened was the Taliban took that over and turned it to an IED factory. And so my boss Aaron, who was there, that originally infilled with the team, I mean, they literally dropped the J dams, and you can see in the video, the perfect circle with the curled up rebar. I mean, just like you see in the movies. I don't want to say he said within that first week. I mean, they probably took out 100 Taliban. Maybe there's some exaggeration there, but they threw down pretty hard. And within that first week or so, I mean, still even on the premises of the schoolyard, one of the Afghans still stepped on an IED that they didn't clear, that they thought they cleared the premises. But anyways, blew his legs off, and they found a couple other ones along the road in front of it. But we were able to. And if you do watch that video, even the Taliban that they interviewed were asked, were you guys ever took over the area, something to that effect. And the guy said, well, yeah, except for 2011, with Americans, but so yeah, I think with what the teams were doing, SEAL teams, the special forces teams, that getting in with the villages, getting buy-in with the elders. The elders chose those members of that security team for that village, and growing that, and then some interoperability from village to village, and obviously most of them were within that same tribe in the given area. That was very effective, and setting that groundwork for effective governance, for business to take place. Because as I was explaining to someone the other day, the issue with the Taliban right now is in order to have effective government and really business, for people to have jobs and incomes and to flourish, is trust. Would anyone put their money into a Taliban controlled area and trust that the Taliban isn't going to, on a whim, take their property or their business, because we got the guns and we can, that trust level. So extending that security out, that trust level, and us being able to get in there and push those anti-government forces out there. From my eyes and what I see and could understand at the time, I think that was hugely successful. And plus, just saving troops and money and everything for the U.S. government. It's a lot easier and more effective to train local Afghans in their own community than sending a soldier out there from the United States to arm and equip and that's the big thing with the special forces with those foreign internal defense missions that they're doing is one of those special forces guys or a team can be that force multiplier and really push that security circle, further and further out. So I think they were very successful. And again, even in Faryab, what they did is doing that original clearing with the SEAL team, then bringing the village stability platform, local buy-in, and growing that security bubble.
Did you happen to watch those areas after you left with that deployment? I mean, you were working, obviously, continuing in your Army career, so there's not that much time to do that. But the reason I ask is I used to write extensively about Sangin, which is in a very different area of Afghanistan. But I had, when they turned over Sangin to Afghan forces, they couldn't stand up to the Taliban there. It just wasn't possible. And the Taliban took it back pretty quickly. And I wondered if people were very upset who had fought there to see it get turned back over to the Taliban. It was a very emotional thing for them. And that happened long before the withdrawal. Just because Sangin was in the Taliban's heartland, they cared about it. That's why so many people died there, is because the Taliban were fighting so hard to keep control of it. So did anything like that happen in Baghlan and Faryab and Konduz, or were you just not watching because you had left? Like, what was your situation like as all of this went down?
Well, I remember, in I want to say 2016, the Taliban to some extent took over Kunduz City, the provincial capital there. And I just remember being home watching that and just thinking, not that I particularly spent time in the city itself, but just thinking that they were actually capable to get to that point of halfway even taking it over. That was kind of the first time I thought, maybe things aren't going as great as the way I was there and the way I left them. And then within the last year, I did do a lot of research and found that the base in Mangal was closed by another special forces team sometime in 2013. The captain of that team had wrote a post online. I meant to reach out to him, but as far as U.S. forces being there was closed in 2013. And I want to say 2015 or 17, there was a major attack by the Taliban that just pretty much wiped out all the Afghans that were there. Over the course of a couple days, that particular part, Mangal village, Alauddin, I think Khazar-Kel, Zeker-Kel, some of them, just kind of went and swept through. And so um, I think 2015 or 2017, I'm sure there's more than one attack, but for the most part, from what I can gather, very heavy Taliban influence there. And again, whoever was there that particular time was taken out. And obviously watching it in 2021 how it went, but 2016 was the first time maybe things aren't going as well as maybe I just kind of assumed that they were. And again, just doing that recent research of what happened in Mangal to the base where it's particularly at. And even recently, actually trying to add that to Google Maps. I told you about that base in Faryab, the schoolhouse. I did add that, but seeing the Google Map images of where I knew our Mangal base was at, from what I can tell, there's not even anything there. The Hesco barriers are there. The thing, we had two large brick buildings there, some wooden ones. It just looks like it's completely gone. So yeah, it's pretty bad.
That always drove me crazy when I was first introduced to this problem set. It was during college, and I did a couple of semesters where we kind of delved into post conflict state reconstruction. And I remember writing about all of our efforts to build up these bases and schools and things, and that, we were going to leave and they were going to be destroyed. And that was that. And it's so sad to see that that's true, and to hear the stories of, the Taliban burning down all of the schools that we helped build in the South in Kandahar, and then seeing, we had to break down our own school that we built in Faryab because, of course, the Taliban are going to try to use any hardened building. And then it makes sense that the places that you guys built up were gone, because if you're not in them, that's wood that somebody can use for their home, bricks that somebody can use for their home. And the Afghans are so resourceful. They've had to be, for centuries. So it's like, here's a building material. I can take this. It's not being used. Let's go repurpose. And it's just sad because that's someone's effort. That's something that, if we would have done this more thoughtfully, if we would have transitioned Afghans more thoroughly, right? Because you can't expect that 2 years, someone who's never held a weapon or never been trained to do that, like, that's not enough time. This was going to be something that required more time. And I wondered, in 2013, I would love to know when that base closed, because that's when we started the first round of peace talks with the Taliban. And we weren't ready for peace. The Afghans weren't ready for peace with the I mean, imagine what would have happened if we would have done what we did in 2021, in 2013. It wouldn't have been ready either. And I think with every subsequent year, we just kind of pulled back a little bit more to see, like, what's going to happen. And what we should have been doing is not that. The reason I really wanted you here was to talk about this. You had said something to me that really moved me. You said you didn't feel like an Afghanistan veteran until last year. And I want to hear you explain what it was that made that transition and why that identity then became important to you.
Yeah, reason I said that is, I guess being in the army and the military in general, oh, you went to Afghanistan, you and everybody else, and then, not to disparage my service, but there's a lot of people that did tons of more flying than I ever thought about, and really, really had to throw down when they were over there. So for me, I guess how I personally felt in the pecking order, like, I was there, sure, but you know, you and everybody else, it wasn't a thing, and until it fell in 2021, that's when I kind of took it personal, as if I had, I ended up missing my daughter being born because of it. I was late. There's personal challenges. Again, not that I have PTSD or anything like that, but you really sit and think about it, like, wow, I really did give up a lot for my year over there and that training and what it put on family. I was married at the time, and everything else and how it affects you. So for the most part, I didn't feel any special way about it. Again, it's the feeling of you and everybody else in the army. Everybody's got a combat patch. Whoop-de-doo. But having seen it fall and then really think about the amount of effort that you had put into that, and actually kind of retrospectively realizing that the time, even at my lower level of what I contributed to that overall mission, because of me and the people that I served with, looking at the situation now, let's say specifically for women in schools, girls and women could go to school because of me. You could go to college because of me, and again, not just me, but others, and what we did in subsequent troop rotations and those that came before me. So, that's when it kind of really felt like a big deal. And as I mentioned, I had a young lady that works for me now. I don't want to give up her name for obvious reasons, but, saying that, and talking to her, wow, they kicked you out of college because you're a woman, and like, well, again, when I was there and the efforts of myself and others, that wasn't the situation. You could do what you wanted to in that regard, but that's when it kind of hit home, like, and I didn't really think about, like, was I, and sometimes I even do think about, was I really there? Was that a real place? Did I really get on that plane? Was I really in Mangal village? Was I really in Faryab? Because when I think about it, and most of my 20s were around other people that were there, just that you and everybody else. But now I'm here in the civilian world, and people talk about it, and again, a lot of them are dismissive. Oh, it's Afghanistan. Everybody fails in Afghanistan. Just really has really made me think, like, maybe I'm not special, but maybe you are a small set of the population that actually went and did that. That really did happen. You really were there. those things really did happen, and because of you, there was a lot of positive that came to the Afghan people, and so that's kind of how I feel about it now, and why I kind of do feel, um, like you see some of the older guys, Vietnam vets, and I never thought I'd be somebody to put on a Afghan vet, whatever, but and I don't now, but I understand it a lot more now given the situation and time has passed.
My very good friend just told me the same thing the other day, that he really understands Vietnam veterans so much better right now because of what's going on. And, I when you said that, that was when I knew I wanted to have you on the podcast. When you said that you didn't feel like an Afghan vet until last year, and you asked, was it important? And I think it is. And here's why. Okay, the base might not be there. Somebody might have turned that base into something else, right? But it is the things that you and everyone else did, giving women the ability to go to school. That's still there. Do you know how many women are going secretly to school right now? It is an incredible number. Now, do I want them going secretly to school? Of course not. And yes, the Taliban have to work so hard to try to quelch everything that the US did in that country, and they hate it, but it still lives in the hearts of the people. And they can't stick around forever. That's just not possible. But yeah, it's not for nothing. And it matters because you did it and you put your heart into it. And I think I asked myself quite candidly, I don't really talk about this very often on the podcast, but I ask it about my marriage all the time, where did it even matter? And it did matter because I put my whole heart and soul into that for 9 years. And so it will always matter to me because that's what I did. And that's, I think, the same thing with Afghanistan. The people who served there were there and they put themselves into it, and anything that you put yourselves into matters. And it kills me to hear veterans asking that question. It should never be a question, and it's so important, I think, to have these conversations about Afghanistan and to find our way of making a difference. So I'd love for you to talk about this young woman that you support, because I think that has to be part of it. And about you mentioned the Google Maps, but I want you to talk about it in more detail because I know the story, but I want to make sure that the people who are listening understand what you went through to put those things on Google Maps.
Yeah, well, what was interesting is for Google Maps, and I thought of more as a memorial. So what had crossed my mind is one of the teams there, 13-16, lost someone that I didn't particularly know, but it was around Sergeant First Class Benjamin Wise. He died in January of 2012, and it had crossed my mind that after the it fell to the Taliban, I after the fact found out they had a memorial plaque there to him and renamed the base at Maziri Sharif Camp Wise after him. And actually, his brother was a SEAL, got out CIA. And if you've ever seen the movie Zero Dark 30, when the supposed doctor, I believe it was, went to that base out in like Sadabad, something like that, out in eastern Afghanistan, that blew himself up and killed those contractors. That was his brother. So, a joint thing to name it after him. But so just remembering people, what did happen to that memorial? What did happen to the one there at like Camp Span, which I did a few times go to, like to get destroyed? Did, they Taliban make pictures of it? Look, us, dumb Americans, you're gone now. We win. And so just going through that, what happened to the memorials, the murals, the T-wall murals and everything else? It started looking on Google Maps, and so that's when I thought about my base that I was at Mangal Village, VSP Mangal. And so, eventually I just, add a place here on the map, clicked it. But usually with Google Maps, you have to be there. So take a video recording, you quote unquote own this place if it's a historical landmark or a business, something like that. And so they kept rejecting me. And I took some screenshots and I basically said, I was like, well, Google, have you essentially ceded Afghanistan to the Taliban? Because if the metrics you're using for ownership of a particular spot you're trying to add to Google Maps is you got to physically be there, well, the only people that are physically there to say I own, this addition from Mangal or this particular memorial is the Taliban, who's someone who's there, who could move freely and do that. So, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, here's some pictures of me being at that base circa 2011. Here's me in the turret, providing security as they're doing their meetings and this, that, and the other. So I'm like, I think you should add it, for those reasons. Again, unless you're saying you should cede the entire country of Afghanistan to the Taliban. Now, a few of them as a joke. For example, like there were some listings like the NDS office in Kabul or something like that. I'm like, claim this business. They wouldn't give it to me, but I thought it was funny. But anyways, that's what got me thinking is him, camp wise, what happened to the memorials, why can't, and I thought that if by adding them, so I had the one VSP Konduz and Faryab where that schoolhouse is, the one in Mangal. Actually, I also added IC Marmal, International Camp Marmal at Mazar-i Sharif, and I had one person add that Mazar-i Sharif, but that was my whole thing. Let's use it, Google Maps as a place as memorials for veterans and to be able to talk about their stories and not let it go to the Taliban.
I love that so much. It's so meaningful. And that's exactly what I thought of when you told me. You didn't tell me the full story when we were corresponding before this, but I love that that's what it was. And that's what I was hoping it was because you own it now. They can't take that. You make your mark. I feel like you would love, there's this great Instagram page, War Murals, and it's all those. I love it. It's perfect. It's, this frozen moment in time from usually very angry, very salty military personnel. And it's so great that those are kept. And there are so many things like that on social media that let veterans, I think, go back, and sorry. Oh, I'm gonna edit that out. Anyway, that let them still be in that space and still revisit it, and it doesn't go to the Taliban. That part can't go to the Taliban. You had it and you keep it, and there are so many veterans who are still fighting, and you are too. So I would love to hear, this is the other part of your story that really touched me. You've been trying to, I'll let you just tell it. Why have you been at the Capitol steps in Juneau? What made you want to do that?
Yeah, and I got a few minutes here. I hate to say it. My computer I thought had more time, but it's dying. I haven't been able to find the cord all day, so I apologize. But make a long story short, I tried to pass a House Joint Resolution here at the Alaska State Capitol saying that CARE, the Coordinator for Afghan Refugees and Evacuation, if I'm saying that right, just simply saying we oppose the cessation of flights, evacuation flights from Afghanistan to third party countries where they get processed, and then those flights from third party here to the U.S. And so I just thought, here at my level, what could I accomplish? And what I could accomplish was, because of my injury, we talked about that earlier, being out of work, well, I do have time to go out there and hold up a sign. So long story short, after about a week and a half of holding up the sign and, members would come out there, hey, what's your sign? What's this about? And I'd get good advice. Well, if you write something, maybe you could pass it along to somebody. So long story short, I sat at the coffee shop here literally all day from like 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. Or not 5 to 6. Anyways, and just, used a guide from another House Joint Resolution and then wrote the whole thing up and then had a local state representative here so that he would take it up. And that was about 2, 3 weeks ago. So it's a process. I don't necessarily want to give out his name. Just want to make sure we're good to go. And, that gets introduced to the correct committee. But my whole thing was, right or wrong, I know this is stepping into politics, but, one thing I hope we can all agree on as far as immigration, special immigrant visas, which were our interpreters and those that work directly for a U.S. company or finance, company, is able to get over here like we promised. If you put your neck out there, help us, support us in that mission, we're going to take care of you on the back end. So without wading again too much into politics, I just think we can all agree that there just needs to be a definite sign from the administration, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State. Look, those SIV immigrants, definitely, we're going to take care of those because I know there's P2, P3 categories that are trying to get over here from Afghanistan and other countries, but just think if we focus SIVs because of what they had to do to get that and qualify for it, I felt like that's the the thing to focus on that we could definitely, regardless of political party ideologies, really get behind. So that's why in the particular resolution I had here at the Alaska State Capitol, I was specific about CARE team, who is charged with that coordination and bringing those folks, once they have that approval, from Kabul over to usually Qatar or to Pakistan, to do that follow-on processing, like their interviews, medical checkups, so on and so forth. And then once that's complete, bring them over here to the United States. So by focusing on the CARE team, the Coordinated for Afghan Refugees and Evacuation, if I'm saying that right, and specifically special immigrant visas, I feel like there's going to be a lot less political resistance for it. Not that there's other cases out there and the ethos that aren't as important, but going back to Afghanistan and those who support us, this seems like the really easy political victory that could be had. And so I'm just hoping that through my efforts, as I said, hey, I had this injury, so I have this time to spend out there and to hold up my sign and to speak with representatives and state senators, that was the right political move to go in the right direction. To go in is dealing with CARE team and special immigrant visas. And as I said before, that lady that works for me now finally had her approval, her and her mother's, about a month ago now. So if you go to the State Department website, where you can see your visa status issued, so that's a very easy plus. But what I'm hoping with that is, with Secretary of Defense Hegseth being a veteran of the Afghan War, hopefully has the ear of the president, and he believes the same as I do with special immigrant visas. Hey, if we help out anybody, these are definitely the ones that should be easy for us to agree on as Americans, that they directly helped us. So if anybody out there deserves to come here to the United States, obviously, there's some recent things in the news about that one particular individual who's a green card holder having their visa revoked. Anyone out there, we can all agree on it. It should be these folks. It should be the special immigrant visas. So strategy-wise, I felt like that was the best direction to go into. And then I have a direct connection, again, the lady that works for me. If this were to pass, CARE keeps on with that mission. They do the right thing, bring him out of Kabul to Qatar to do that processing, bring him here. That's someone I know directly would be affected by this. So just hope across the veteran spectrum out there, let's try to focus on the easy. I feel like the easy political victory here, and just have one more thing to say at the federal level. Here at the state level, we care about this. Our state citizens care about it, and that just gives our federal delegation here, at least with Alaska, some of that ammunition to go at that federal level to Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, to the President, and say, look, here's another example of veterans raising their hands saying this is important. We need to do the right thing here. So that's why I did it.
Yeah, I think it's really important to do right now. It's not an easy thing to do, to take the time and go do that. And I think that's excellent. I also feel like I would be remiss if I didn't say that I totally agree that we need to keep SIV, but I also think we need to fight for US RAP. Just because, like P1, the prosecutors who, like, I was thinking about the suicide bomber, the almost suicide bomber. If somebody grabbed him up and threw him over to, the justice sector, those are the people who were putting guys like that behind bars, who were doling out real justice to people who didn't even deserve it because they wouldn't have given it to us. And now their lives are at risk. And they don't qualify for SIV, but they qualify for P1. And if they go back into Afghanistan, they're going to be on the reprisal list, So I totally agree. We made a promise through SIV, but we made a promise through US RAP too. And we really need to make sure that the people who put their lives on the line for us aren't getting murdered by the Taliban. I really hope that people are listening to veterans, especially right now. There are more than 128,000 Afghans in that pipeline for SIV, and there are 13,600 visas left. And we've given COM approval to that many people. More than likely, so we're so woefully behind with SIV. Not only does it have to continue, but you have to give out more SIVs for these people, or there's going to be none left. And yeah, we've not done a good job of doing the right thing by our allies so far, but I think we can improve it. And that's the thing, is until a travel ban comes out, that's finalized that says no travel for Afghans at all. I'm going to keep up that hope that we're going to do the right thing because of the Hegseths, because of Waltz, because of Rubio, that they're going to say, no, we really need to do this thing. That's really important. We have to finish. I've heard President Trump say so many times he's talked about Afghanistan. And so it's like, you can do something amazing here. You can finish this chaos and restore order and bring our reputation back. And I am just begging and pleading his administration to do that. So I think it's awesome, James, that you've been doing that. But you told me you stopped going to the Capitol steps. And so I think that's my last question for you is, why did you stop going to the Capitol steps? And how are you feeling about all of your service as all of this kind of insanity has roiled up in the last few weeks?
Well, kind of what you said about importance, and when you'd email me saying, your time and service was important, I appreciate that. But one of the reasons I stopped is, and I admit some of this is going to wade into some politics, not trying to be political, but, we had, I guess the best way to sum up my feelings is when I hold a sign up there, make I had a dry erase sign for a little bit, and hand wrote out in cursive, thank you, teacher, make Afghan immigrants great again, support the House Joint Resolution, yada yada. And one interaction I had with someone that was a staff member for one of the representatives, out of curiosity, came up and read the sign and said, I thought you were some sort of right-winger out here. I said, well, why is that? Because one of the bullet points there on my sign said, freedom is life. And I don't understand how that's a right-wing issue. That should be a universal human issue, freedom to live your life as you please. And some of the other things is just a group of people walk by you, going back to importance. In the year of 2011, as far as the government's concerned, that was very, very important. It's very important to the tune of, tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars. And through the course of the war, trillions of dollars, So I just feel weird talking about something that in the year 2011, over 100,000 U.S. service members were in country. Tens of billions of dollars being spent that year, hundreds of billions of dollars. Like, I'm not talking crazy here. This isn't a crazy out there in the universe issue, some obscure thing. This was my life, as we discussed, and why I personally didn't feel like a veteran per se, Afghan veteran, or to speak about it. And so to see these groups of people walking by me with picture the Afghan flag and talking about it, and just people not even give you eye contact, like, you're a crazy person out here talking about your subject. Like, if it was this important to the government at the time and to our nation at the time, and obviously to me at the time, why is it 14 years later I'm a crazy person now trying to bring it up? Like, I just, and the larger politics I say to, the younger generation of people out there is, look, and going back to what you said about understanding of Vietnam veterans, well, if this is how they're treating Afghan veterans in that particular issue, what we went through, what the country of Afghanistan and its people went through, and what we were trying to achieve, what about the next war? How do you think they're going to treat you? How do you think you're going to feel if you're 18 going in the military and whatever the next war might be, and think about 10, 15 years after your service, and so it was so crazy to see the level of nonchalantness, just crazy guy. I thought you were this, right winger, this, that, and the other, and and going back what I'd said too about the lady that works for me. I mean, this is a very real issue. This has very real consequences. It will have very real consequences, and so with a lot of the stuff that is in politics about current ongoing wars, current talk about immigration from different parts of the world. Well, I mean, what just really bothers me, not to say bad about current wars across this world, but let's go back. Let's finish up, tidy up this one. let's do the right thing. If you can't do the right thing here, and the government and your fellow American can't put enough, their time, emotional energy in doing the right thing here and focusing on it, why do we have any business as a nation talking about this other war or that war or this immigrant group or that immigrant group? If SIV immigrants specifically, just focusing in there, they don't deserve your time. They don't deserve, you to have some emotions about the situation those folks are going through, and veterans are going through, and finishing up how important that was at the time, and making right, by those SIV immigrants and veterans. I just don't want to hear about what you have to say about a current war on the other side of the world. I don't care. I'm sorry. Not that it's not important. I'm sure it is. Two things can happen at the same time. You can have, I understand that's what someone mentioned to me. Well, we can care about that issue. And there's no reason why we can't still care about this current issue. But I don't speak for everyone. I just know some veterans I've talked to feel the same way. You can't even make right by this. You can't even come through for SIV immigrants. And you want me to cry about this other war and spend another couple $10 billion and create what you want? You want to create new veterans? You can't even take care of the ones we already got. You want to talk about these immigrant groups? The people that literally put their necks out on behalf of the United States government. You're looking at me like I'm crazy. Those folks looking at me like I'm crazy. Don't even give me eye contact. I'm supposed to care. It just really upset me. So. Not to be too long-winded, but that's why I had to say, you know what, no, it feels foolish to go up there, and I'm just not going to do that, So I spent my time, all the things I said that while I was there, women could go to school, girls could go to college, people relatively didn't have to live in fear, live their lives. I feel really good about that, and as bad as it has gotten, it's really highlighted how important everyone's service was there, why we were there, and what we were able to achieve and provide for that little time for the Afghan people. But with the current politics of all the issues that people want to bring up, when I get looked at like I'm crazy for bringing Afghanistan up and SIV immigrants up, I couldn't go up. I'm sorry, I'm long-winded, but I couldn't go up there anymore.
I totally understand it. I have talked to so many veterans who say variations on a lot of the things that you just said. And it always reminds me, civilians got to go away scot-free for 20 years while veterans went to Afghanistan. I have had people question so many times, there are a lot of things that go on in this world that we all have our things that we care about, right? Afghanistan, to veterans who were there, it's a beloved topic almost always, and to have it just poo-pooed by people who have no damn clue of what the country is, why we were there. And it kind of goes back to the Osama bin Laden thing. I think people really thought, oh, well, now we can get out of Afghanistan, and they don't understand that Osama at that point was so far removed from why we were in Afghanistan. Osama was able to be in Afghanistan because the Taliban let him. And the Taliban had treated women like chattel, and they had drugged them into darkness. And we were there not just to make sure Al-Qaeda couldn't take hold. We were there to make sure that democracy could take hold. And we lost, oh my God, we didn't have a strategy. We didn't have anything, but it impacted you and everybody else who served there with the moral injury of being told this matters, right? But then we forget. We don't even want to talk about it. We don't, Afghanistan. And I'm so sorry that that's the reception you've gotten. And I'm not surprised because, like I said, we could go about our lives and never be touched by it. Which says a lot about this country. It's not one of the things that I'm proudest of, and I worry about future conflicts too, like you said. I want to respond to everything you said, but it would take me way too long. But I think the most important thing is what you said about basically retention and people wanting to join the military. I've heard that a lot of times. People wonder, well, why aren't men and women going to the military? We saw what you did. in Afghanistan. We saw what you did to, oh my God, the Kaya veterans, the people who were there at the fall. They've been completely maligned and mistreated. And, you know, why would anyone want to go sign up for that or to be forgotten? It's unconscionable. I am astonished that all of these things are happening, and I'm just so sorry. That's why I wanted to have you on here. I want you to know you're not everything that you're feeling. I totally see it. I see it all the time, and it's unconscionable and it's terrible. And what you did, it matters. It's important. It made lives different. It continues to make lives different because women who are contacting me and other people, you know, they believe that they have the rights to do the things that they did while you were in the country. They didn't. They still want that, so it matters.
Yeah, just what I've realized too is kids today. You think about this. A senior in high school right now was not even born on 9/11. I'm 38. You ask someone of my generation or older, everyone can tell you exactly where they're at on 9/11. Exactly. And I understand we may not agree with the U.S.'s decisions after that and the response. Okay. Everybody knows where they were at and what it meant to them, what it meant to the country. So now when you see this younger generation, like I had a coworker, we went out to this band that was here downtown at the One Club. But I just realized like they have no understanding. They weren't even born, much less understand the geopolitical of it, the Iraq War. Like that is, it's literally for the new generation. Even the college kid, a senior right now, is literally history to them, history, and that does seem a little odd. So when I hear, what's I guess important to them in geopolitics, how they feel about immigration or wars, everything, it's like what we've done, Afghanistan veterans and the Iraq War veterans, like it just doesn't really even register to them. And so having that connection, but stronger connection now to Vietnam vets to understand. I get where you're coming from now, and I honestly get some of their skepticism about politics and geopolitics and what happens in the government. I definitely feel that. But one thing that, because I know you said that was the last question, that kind of hurts me and maybe some other veterans too, is the way that it ended. Had it been a defeat on the battlefield, we understand why the French left Indochina, why they left Vietnam, Dien Bien Phu. It's over. They lost. They were forced out. But you can't really name the battle where, the United States was forced out of Afghanistan. You told me we lost at the Battle of X, Y, and Z and we were forced out. It's not what happened. We quit. We quit. And what hurts is it was political reasons that we quit, not on the battlefield. And so, look, as a veteran, they say you write that blank check up to and including your life on behalf of the United States government. You look at politicians, across both aisles, and, what they're willing to sacrifice for the cause of Afghanistan, what we went there for, is basically what's politically expedient for the time. So if it's not the flavor of the week, well, there goes their commitment, But you asked us for our commitment level to be up to and including your life. And unfortunately, I know people that had to cash that check, unfortunately. So, that's what I could understand and have a better feeling with Vietnam veterans. It wasn't, we got pushed out and here's the battle. It was the lack or the loss of political will. And unfortunately, the current political climate, I understand people blame one, Biden or Trump and, this, that, and the other. But, you look at both of their rhetoric, even Trump had said, look, I don't necessarily blame that he got out of there. His blame is how we left. And, okay, there's a fair point to be made. But at the end of the day, currently, whether you love or hate Trump or Biden, they're both on the same page of, it was right to leave. And that particular part, especially the way we left, but leaving in and of itself, why feed the Afghan people to the wolves? And recently I rewatched Charlie's Wilson War. What we were supposed to have learned from the experience of the Soviets in Afghanistan and our support for the Mujahideen was, if you walk away, As you saw the one scene with on the balcony between Tom Hanks and Philip Seymour Hoffman, hey, pay attention, the crazies are moving into Kandahar, and eventually they gave that sanction to Al Qaeda. Are we now saying that that was not the lesson to be learned? So if it is the true lesson to be learned, then what should we expect to happen from Afghanistan in the future? And again, I think just what hurts the most, for me at least, is it wasn't we lost the battle, we got kicked out. As long as I was there and others were there, women went to school, had a semblance of a democratic government, and things were moving in a positive direction. And we just politically gave up our hands and said, too bad, so sad, see you later. And that, to me, that's the hardest part to swallow as a veteran having been there.
Absolutely. And I think that the more time goes by, the more we let, the falsehoods take over that, the Afghans wouldn't fight. Well, the Afghans lost their Air Force because we weren't supplying them, and they needed a contractor force to keep up their Air Force. We pulled that out. We pulled out of Bath in the middle of the night with no word to our Afghan allies. How would you feel if the most hardened remaining base was suddenly evacuated by Americans in the middle of the night? Not freaking good. The Afghans fought hard. They couldn't do it alone anymore. And, but that's not the narrative that we're going to keep on with. And you can see it's interesting too. When President Trump said, hey, we got the guy who plotted the ISIS bombing. To me, that felt like a tidy way to say, we're done. We did it. And you know what? How many other ISIS-K bomb plotters are still in Afghanistan? And every day we go closer to pre-9/11 conditions with Al-Qaeda still closely tied to the Taliban, still able to operate training cells inside of Afghanistan. Women going further and further back by the week, So it's very disconcerting to see all of those things, but they don't mean that the veteran sacrifices that were made there don't matter, because all of that could have, if we would have just, like you said, if we stayed the course, if we kept a small contingent of people in there, if we kept helping the Afghan government build up, it wasn't going to be easy. I mean, Afghanistan is not called the graveyard of empires for nothing. It is never going to be an easy place to say, hey, let's bring some stability, because it has lacked it for so long, but it was doing well with all of that support in there. And I think that it could have done well if, like you said, it wasn't politically expedient to say, well, I'm going to be the one to end things, and this is going to be, it's the time. And, Americans just didn't care about it. It was very easy to say, we're done.
And something, if you've heard about the documentary Retrograde, which I understand some of the reasonings is next to impossible to find in its entirety, but what I don't think people realize with going back to support is Taliban always continuously had their support and members in Pakistan and foreign financing, but now they have even better support that's more concerning to us, which is China. With minerals being sold to the Chinese government, recognizing the Taliban government, and some other things. You want to talk about entrenchment. This is looking a whole lot worse by the day. And going back to what you said about equipment and whatnot, or not having the contractors, I hope that part does not get lost in history of, if you're an Afghan soldier and some of these bases that are out in eastern Afghanistan, in order to have support, some of them purely rely on helicopter replenishment. Well, without those contractors, without those spare parts, you can kiss those goodbye. And the other point I'd make too is how much equipment was left. I'm somewhat not as concerned, but the point to this is people don't realize, for example, a lot of the weapons, are standard, the M4s and whatnot. Those are 5.56 millimeter NATO rounds. There's no other country around there that even manufactures that ammunition. So for the Afghans, when we're starting to close down not allowing the contractors supplies, you get in 2 months of gunfighting, heavy fighting with the Taliban. You spend all that ammunition, the 81 millimeter mortars, 60 millimeter mortars, that 5.56, that 7.62 NATO. Where are you going to get new bullets from? The only person you could get it from is in NATO countries, whether from Europe or obviously the United States. And if we're saying too bad, so sad, even if they wanted to, they're going to get in a situation. There is no more replenishment, and they can't get it from anyone else. Like Pakistan couldn't give it to them. Saudi Arabia couldn't give it to them. Well, maybe, but you know what I'm saying? So, but Taliban still had their support. They still had the ammunition coming in, political support, financial support. So the enemy is getting their support without cessation. But the Afghan government is getting cut off, and we're expecting them to keep on going. When the bullets run out, that's it. When the part breaks down, there's no more. That is it. You're up the creek, and that was not this. That was not the same situation the Taliban was in, and so it was an unfair fight for those last few months. They couldn't gone on if they wanted to, and there was plenty of them out there that did, and went up to the last. And I wish we could have that documentary Retrograde come out in its entirety. And I understand if they wanted to say redact some portions of it, I'd understand we can do that, but I just don't want that to be lost to history of how we didn't just politically give up on them. Where are you going to get the ammunition to fight? Where are you going to get the mortars to fight? Taliban was still getting their funding, still getting that weapons coming from Pakistan and other countries. And we told the Afghan government, too bad, so sad, and we expected different results. I don't think it's their fault.
You know why they took retrograde down, right?
I've heard a few theories, but I would like to hear yours.
Yeah, I actually wrote about this for the Examiner. One of the people that they showed, because they were showing personnel's faces, and one of them was found by the Taliban because he was like I forget, he had like a nickname. He was very handsome. But they found him at a checkpoint, and they tortured him, and he died of his wounds. And after that, everybody was saying, "How dare you, Nat Geo?" And like that was not the first time that they did not adequately protect an Afghan in one of their docks. I have contact with another who has struggled with his SIV because of DROG that is not fair to him at all. But regardless, he was shown in an SF dock, and like now can't ever leave his home. And so anyway, the Nat Geo was told, take it, you can't put their faces out because it's a kill list, and that's why they took it down. And I loved that doc. I thought it was really well. It shows exactly what you're saying. However, I think it was irresponsible for them, especially. And I asked Nat Geo when I wrote that article. I sent them questions and said, "Did you know?" Because when they were putting it together, it didn't come out until April of 22, I think, or April of 23. I guess it would make sense. Yeah, it had to have been. Anyway, when it came out, everybody knew about the reprisal campaign. So it was like, how could you put their faces out there if you knew that they weren't all out of the country, and you knew the Taliban were trying to kill everybody, especially high-value targets like them? So anyway, that's what I have heard happen. I think Nat Geo responded to me. I mean, that's pretty much. I don't believe it's wrong. I think that's really what
Yeah.
happened. And
No, now
it's
now I
just,
understand that if you're saying
yeah,
that it came out after the fact, I wasn't aware of that, then I would
yeah,
agree with you that from a moral perspective would definitely be wrong, and that's what I'd encourage if they were going to put it out, to definitely have a redacted, cover the face,
yeah,
fake names, want to cover up voices. And I'm not saying it would still be right, but if that is true, what you had said, it came out in 22. Morally, that was definitely an irresponsible thing because of what I get journalistic independence, and I understand that point, but morally, for their lives that were at stake, and looking at it in the light of SIV immigrants or allies, we hear a lot of talk about our allies or allies. Man, is that how we treat our allies? Just, hey, Taliban, here they are. Let me give you a picture of them. So, but
yeah.
yeah, in that light, yeah, if they were to release it or do it again, definitely needs to be redacted and do the right thing.
I didn't think about it until I heard that it was happening. Yeah, it came out. I just checked September of 22. I think I saw it because it came out on Disney Plus. I want to say in April of 23, and that's when I saw it. I think. But yeah, they premiered at film festivals by then. And by then, I mean, I think even the New York Times had talked about the reprisal campaign at that point. And I understand too, like it takes away from the beauty of that film. Like it was very beautifully filmed, and it is so important. I mean, the individual I told you about who was working with our special operators, they they did obscure his face, but they said his name at some point, or like the name he went by. And so it was very easy. They talked about where they were, and so they could go to the local villagers and be like, "Hey, have you seen this guy? And what was his name?" And that's how they got him. It wasn't from his face. It was from the fact that they had identified him in another way, even with his like just nickname. This is in our country, we don't think that way, right? We don't think about we're going to kill you because you killed our people. Like that doesn't happen here. But that's Afghanistan. And you know, if we're going to operate there, if we're going to do these things, we have to think about that and protect. That's why SIV is so important. That's why SIV exists, is because of that need to seek revenge on anybody who worked for the puppet government, as the Taliban always liked to call Gyroa. Yeah, well, okay, James, I've talked a lot. Do you have any closing thoughts before we sign off here tonight?
If anything needs to come from this entire situation, obviously the 5 meter target is SIV immigrants, possibly P1 and others. I think long term what needs to come from this is historical education. Going back to what I said with the generations, even a senior in college right now doesn't even remember 9/11. How can we as veterans get the message out there of what really happened? What was the lead up? What was our historical understanding of the Soviet-Afghan War and why we made the decisions that we did? What is it that we tried to accomplish and push that story forward? The second thing I'd really like, or third, I would like to bring up and see from this, and what I'd had the idea with the adding to Google Maps is, for example, Vietnam veterans have the wall. Right now, Afghanistan veterans have nothing, and I understand that takes time. So, my idea was to have, say, I don't know, somewhere out in the desert that resembles the majority terrain of Afghanistan, have like a HESCO barrier, maybe a mile in circumference there in the shape of Afghanistan, and have it within the correct spacing, sizing within the country of Afghanistan, the different bases that we had there, and then there could be for VSP Mangal, and then you would walk, walking trail, whatever, that was, the correct, placing within that park for, IC Marmol, this, that, and the other, so that since, even though a lot of us went there as our unit from the States to Afghanistan and back, multiple units came through the same places. So having that place there, that multiple veterans, that multiple units that served in those areas could have, somewhere to have that remembrance for people we lost or experiences. So again, that historical education, working on that, and then that physical place where we could go and say, this is where I was at, and I can walk and say, I was here in Konduz, and let's walk across, and we were here in another spot, and have that place to where we could leave, government-sponsored memorial plaque, something like that. So that would be my closing argument: is how do we teach the younger generations and future generations about Afghanistan, what it was all about, and then a place that we can have to say, this is what we've done, and have that remembrance there. And I guess in conclusion, I do appreciate you having me on here. I'm glad I was able to find you out, reach out to you and vice versa, and be here and share my story. And there's plenty of more stories I could always share, but I think we covered a lot of good ground. I appreciate you having me.
We did, and I love I think it's so important to create some kind of national monument for Afghan veterans, just because right now it's a very lonely and hard time for veterans, and I love the idea of having a place where people can come together, and you're not alone on the steps of the Capitol, right? You're there, and maybe there's somebody who was at IC Marmol or something, and I think that's really powerful, and I think it needs to happen sooner rather than later, to honor what was given. And I hope that people are at work on that. And it doesn't wait too long. It's very, very, very important. And we can't forget that in the mess of everything else that's going on. We usually end our episodes, if we can, with a letter. And so today I have a couple different letters to choose from. And I wanted to read one from a young woman. And I'm going to give her a pseudonym because everyone who writes to me who has family or anything or possibly has to return to Afghanistan, I feel like needs to be writing under a pseudonym. I'm going to call her Fatima. I hope you're doing well. My name is Fatima and I'm originally from Afghanistan. I learned about your page through YouTube and know that you have extensive knowledge about the Afghan people, especially Afghan girls. It has been 2 years since I fled my country due to restrictions on education and personal freedom. Fortunately, I had the opportunity to come to the United States, where I resumed my education in 11th grade. I am now in 12th grade with just 2 months left until graduation. I recently applied to college and was thrilled to receive my acceptance. However, after being advised to complete the FAFSA form for financial aid, I was informed that I am not eligible because I only have a visa and do not hold permanent residency or other qualifying status. Since you are a well-connected and knowledgeable individual, I wanted to reach out to ask if you know of any resources, organizations, or scholarships that could help me fund my education. Attending college has been my lifelong dream, and continuing my studies is the reason I came to the United States. Without financial support, I am uncertain about how I will be able to pursue my education. I would be truly grateful for any guidance, support, or connections you can provide to help me achieve my goal of attending college. Thank you for taking the time to read my message. So what I told Fatima was that I would read this here and that I hoped that someone who is listening can offer some insight. I don't have any insight on anything to do with scholarships and things of that nature. And I know that so many of my wonderful listeners are much more well-versed in different things than I am. So I am playing the conduit. If you have any information for Fatima, please send me an email to the Afghanistan Project Podcast at gmail.com and I'll get you in touch with her. And I so appreciate you being here. And I just want to thank everybody who listens, for supporting veterans, supporting the people of Afghanistan, for honoring the memory of this, because that's always why this existed, was to make a historical record, because I think people are going to try to erase the reality of what happened. And this is proof that you were there. I was never there, but I cared deeply, and so many people did, and we won't let it go quietly into that good night. So thank you to everybody, Tasha Kaur, and hope to see you again soon.
Khadafaz.